Rap icon Jay-Z's name has surfaced in a new batch of documents released by the U.S. Justice Department related to Jeffrey Epstein. The documents were made public on Friday and include reports submitted to an FBI hotline in 2019. Notably, Jay-Z, whose legal name is Sean Carter, is mentioned in one of those public submissions. It's important to note from the outset, Jay-Z's name does not appear in Epstein's personal flight logs, contact books, or confirmed records.
You never see the archive when it's being built. You only hear about it when something leaks. That's how the system protects itself. Not with walls, not with guards, not even with laws, but with silence layered so thick that by the time the public hears a whisper.
Instead, his name appears in a complaint submitted by a member of the public to the FBI. Other notable names mentioned in the same set of hotline records include rapper Pusha T and disgraced film producer Harvey Weinstein, an unexpected grouping that has raised eyebrows online. The connection comes from a single complaint that has since circulated widely on social media. According to the document, the individual filing the report described believing she had been drugged, which she said clouded her memory. The complaint states that the drugging was attributed to individuals described as handlers, people who allegedly established friendships with victims. Within that complaint, the filer identified the artist Pusha T as one of those handlers. The document further claims that Weinstein and Pusha T attended a party where the complainant alleged she was drugged before sexual abuse occurred. The allegation involving Jay-Z is described separately in the same complaint. According to the FBI hotline report, the allegation involving Jay-Z is said to date back to 1996. The complainant alleged that she later awoke in the presence of Harvey Weinstein and Sean Carter, known publicly as Jay-Z, while Weinstein was allegedly engaging in sexual misconduct. Again, these claims appear solely in a public hotline submission. They are not backed by court findings, indictments, or confirmed evidence within the Epstein case files. Jay-Z and Pusha T are not listed in Epstein's verified records, travel logs, or contact lists. Still, the appearance of Jay-Z's name alongside Weinstein, whose criminal history is well documented, has fueled widespread online reaction. The allegations have sent shockwaves through the music industry and across social media platforms. One commenter wrote, quote, "So let me get this straight. Jay-Z was friends with Harvey Weinstein, Diddy, R. Kelly, and now he's appearing in Epstein files, and there's no truth to any of it? Interesting." Another added, quote, "Let me guess. People are about to make excuses for Jay-Z. Now, suddenly, no one wants to believe the DOJ website." As of now, no charges have been filed against Jay-Z or Pusha T in connection to these claims. The FBI hotline reports represent unverified allegations submitted by members of the public. Still, the resurfacing of these names in the context of Epstein-related documents has reopened conversations about power, proximity, and accountability in entertainment. And for now, the questions continue, even as the facts remain unchanged.
The truth has already been buried under 10 competing narratives. Because archives like these aren't just storage. They're insurance policies. Digital vaults filled with moments never meant for daylight, recordings captured in private rooms, documents stamped, sealed, and indexed under classifications the public will never decode, surveillance without warrants, cameras without consent, files without expiration dates. And the people inside those archives? They're never told they're being archived. That's the first rule. Power doesn't just operate in the present, it prepares for the future. Every conversation, every meeting, every private celebration, every closed-door gathering becomes potential leverage the moment it's recorded. Not always for exposure. Sometimes for control. Because the most valuable weapon isn't a leaked video, it's the threat that one exists. And that threat shapes behavior long before anything surfaces online. That's why when archive rumors erupt, the reaction is always the same. Panic first. then denied
with respect to this or anything to do with Epstein. You fast forward to 2019. Andrew attempted to counter the narrative publicly in a now infamous BBC Newsnight interview. Instead, I would just say probably proved to be a little more problematic than he thought it would be. His explanations came under a lot of scrutiny, like the claim that, hey, I couldn't have done anything with Giuffre because I was at a Pizza Express that evening at a children's party. Or remember when he tried to refute Giuffre's claim that he was sweating heavily dancing at a bar with her because he said he has this or he had this obscure medical condition or he didn't sweat? Yeah. So what happens? Queen Elizabeth forced her son to step back from public duties. His charities, military affiliations, they were ultimately stripped away. The damage was severe. And the story escalated again, because in July of 2019, Epstein was arrested on federal sex trafficking charges in New York. 1 month later, he died in his jail cell. But that wasn't the end of it. No, the legal reckoning didn't end with his death. 2021, Virginia Giuffre filed a civil lawsuit against Prince Andrew, then Prince Andrew, in U.S. federal court. And facing the prospect of a very public trial, Andrew reportedly settled the case in 2022 for an undisclosed sum directed to Giuffre's charity. Now, the settlement included apparently no admission of liability, but it did cement Andrew's isolation. He seemingly withdrew almost entirely from public life, seemingly was living a quiet life at Royal Lodge in Windsor, and for a time it appeared the story maybe reached its conclusion. Not quite. For years, the U.S. Department of Justice, the DOJ, held an enormous cache of investigative material from the Epstein case, victim statements, flight logs, tens of thousands of communications. And in late 2025, the Epstein Files Transparency Act forced the DOJ to begin releasing those records. Again, all the Epstein investigative materials in their possession, something that we've been covering religiously here on Sidebar. And the release was staggering. Millions of pages. This wasn't interpretation, this wasn't rumor, it was raw material to be examined. And as we looked at these files, there was one set of documents that stood out. These email communications between Epstein and a contact identified as the Duke. Messages dated 2010 after, again, Epstein's conviction, discussing dinner plans, introductions, and most strikingly, emails in which Andrew allegedly appeared to forward official visit reports from a government trade mission in Southeast Asia directly to Epstein. Because at one point, Andrew was the UK trade envoy. So this shifted the story fundamentally, because these were time-stamped records suggesting an ongoing functional relationship between this convicted sex offender and a senior royal. So the consequences followed quickly. In October of 2025, as Giuffre's posthumous memoir renewed scrutiny and pressure mounted, King Charles took unprecedented action. He initiated the formal process to strip his brother of his remaining style, titles, honors. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was no longer a prince, no longer a duke. He was removed from Royal Lodge, relocated to a smaller residence on the Sandringham estate. And then came the legal shockwave. The disclosure of the trade mission documents prompted a formal complaint to British authorities alleging a potential breach of the Official Secrets Act, legislation designed to protect sensitive government information. And the Thames Valley Police has now confirmed that they are assessing the materials. So for the first time, Andrew was not simply confronting public disgrace or civil litigation. He was facing the possibility of much more serious legal scrutiny. Potentially, are we talking a crime? And that is where the story stands now. So what began as a controversial friendship evolved into a public reckoning, a legal settlement, the loss of royal status, and now a police assessment triggered not by rumor, but by seemingly documentary evidence emerging from a U.S. court.
Then narrative warfare. Because once the public believes secret footage exists, it doesn't matter whether it's verified. The damage begins at belief level. Trust erodes, alliances fracture, industries start scanning themselves for weak points. You see executives suddenly distancing themselves from longtime associates, brands going silent, partnerships dissolving overnight without explanation. That's not coincidence. That's archive shockwave behavior. The digital age made one thing irreversible: everything can be recorded, and nothing can be fully erased. Servers replicate, backups multiply, encrypted drives pass through hands no one can track. A single file doesn't live in one place. It lives everywhere and nowhere at once. So when whispers begin about sealed collections, hidden footage, private recordings stored away for decades, it triggers something primal inside institutional power. Fear of exposure isn't just about guilt.
ordered release, and the ground has shifted completely. So with the police now assessing this, what does that actually mean? More importantly, what are they looking for? This isn't about relitigating Virginia Giuffre's allegations. That was a civil lawsuit. It's been settled. This is something different. This is about documents that we haven't really talked about before. Andrew's official role. So in 2010, when many of those emails were sent, Andrew wasn't just the Duke of York. He was appointed the UK's special representative for international trade and investment. And this complaint that sparked this police assessment focuses on emails where he appears to send confidential visit reports from official trips to Epstein. And that moves the issue from personal conduct to alleged potential misconduct in public office. So to understand the stakes, to understand what we're talking about, you gotta understand what we're talking about here, the Official Secrets Act. Think of it kind of as the UK's main law against government leaks. For someone in Andrew's position at the time, it can be a crime to make a damaging disclosure of protected information without authorization. What counts as protected information? Things like security secrets, defense plans. Crucially here, international relations. Those trade reports from Southeast Asia, they're all about diplomacy and international deals. That's the international relations category that seemingly we're talking about. So the core question for police now is this: could sharing, or allegedly sharing, those official documents with a private foreign citizen, especially one with Jeffrey Epstein's background and connections, can that be seen as a damaging disclosure that harmed the UK's interests? That's the legal question. That's what they're assessing. So it is critical to kind of be precise about what is happening here, right? So the police statement says that they are, quote, assessing the information. This isn't an abstract concept. The same document dump triggered a separate active police investigation into former British ambassador to the United States, Peter Mandelson, over similar allegations of sharing sensitive information with Epstein, on top of the fact that he just had apparently weird communications with the guy. But the precedent is being set, okay? So I want to dive into this. I want to get into the emails. And we're going to coin these the Invisible Man emails, because the document release contains a separate set of emails from the early 2000s involving an individual using the email signature, The Invisible Man. Now, the messages span roughly 2001 to 2002. They're addressed primarily to Ghislaine Maxwell. The identity of the sender is not explicitly stated in the release files. However, contextual references within the emails include mentions of royal residences, official schedules, travel that is consistent with Andrew's movements during that period. So for example, in one August 2001 email, the Invisible Man, again, let's presume it's Andrew, we don't know for sure, the Invisible Man writes to Maxwell from what appears to be a royal setting, describing being immoral and referring to the royal family and the girls, okay, in the context of daily activities. And in that message, the sender writes, quote, I am up here at Balmoral Summer Camp for the royal family. Activities take place all day and I am totally exhausted at the end of each day. The girls are completely shattered and I will have to give them an early night today as it is getting tiring splitting them up all the time. How's LA? Have you found me some new inappropriate friends? Let me know when you are coming over, as I am free from the 25th of August until the 2nd of September and want to go somewhere hot and sunny with some fun people before having to put my nose firmly to the grindstone for the fall. Any ideas greatly received. See ya, A XXX. And remember, when we talk about girls, Prince Andrew has 2 daughters. Okay, in a separate August 2001 exchange, Maxwell tells the same sender that she has only been able to find appropriate friends, writing, so sorry to disappoint you. However, the truth must be told. I have only been able to find appropriate friends. We'll let you know about some church meetings on those dates. Kisses, GX. And the sender responds, distraught. You probably wouldn't know, but I lost my valet on Thursday. He died.
It's about loss of control. Because control depends on timing. If powerful networks control when information surfaces, they control the fallout. They can prepare statements, shape media framing, deploy distraction cycles. But leaks don't follow schedules. Leaks detonate. And when they do, they don't just expose individuals, they expose ecosystems. Private jets, closed guest lists, offshore celebrations, unregistered meetings in properties shielded from surveillance oversight, rooms where phones were confiscated but cameras were not. Those environments were designed for secrecy. But secrecy always leaves residue. Security logs, flight manifests, staff testimony, maintenance recordings, digital entry systems. Archives are built from fragments like these. Not always in one place. Sometimes scattered across legal firms, private intelligence contractors, data storage facilities operate
in his sleep. He had been with me since I was 2. I'm a little off balance as not only has my office been restructured, I have left the RN and now my whole life is in turmoil as I have no one to look after me. He was a real rock and almost a part of the family. If you have any good ideas as to how to get my mind back on track, I'd be grateful for advice. See you real soon. I hope if you are coming over, AXXX. Got another email from February 2002, so the same sender discusses apparent travel plans to Peru and writes, as far as girls, well, I leave that entirely to you and Juan Esteban. And that message appears in a longer thread that includes a third party, Juan Esteban Ganoza, who writes to Maxwell discussing sightseeing and activities and social arrangements and asks about the girls. How old is he? I doubt it that he will find someone, but we can try. In a further email from March of 2002, Maxwell writes to the same address stating, I just gave Andrew your telephone number. He is interested in seeing the Nazca lines. He can ride, but it is not his favorite sport, i.e. pass on the horses. Some sightseeing, some two-legged sightseeing, read intelligent, pretty fun, and from good families, and he will be very happy. I know I can rely on you to show him a wonderful time and that you will only introduce him to friends that you can trust and rely on to be friendly and discreet and fun. He does not want to read about any trip in the papers, whom or what he saw. Call me if you have any questions. Otherwise, you can expect a very English-sounding gentleman on the phone to call up and say hi. I told him it would be best if he made his plans directly with you. The only part that I'm jealous about is that he will get to see you and that he will be in Peru and have you as his tour guide for a day. Besos, GX. So those emails don't include explicit descriptions of illegal activity per se, and the release doesn't identify the sender by name. Kind of see why it's questionable, right? And the documents also don't establish whether any of those plans were carried out. But again, a little strange, because what they do provide is kind of this contemporaneous written communication showing Maxwell discussing introductions and travel and, discrete social arrangements, potentially involving Andrew, during the same period that were referenced in later allegations. Now you go back to 2010, okay? August 2010. So this is about 2 years after Epstein pled guilty, right? 2008. And the Epstein emails contact identified as the Duke. He writes, I have a friend who I think you might enjoy having dinner with. She will be in London 2024. The next morning, the Duke replies, of course, I am in Geneva until the morning of the 22nd, but would be delighted to see her. Will she be bringing a message from you? Please give her my contact details to get in touch. A month later, in late September 2010, the email thread continues again between Epstein and the Duke address, and in that exchange, Epstein writes, already in London, what time would you like me and redacted name? We will also need to have private time. The Duke appears to respond, alternatively, we could have dinner at Buckingham Palace and lots of privacy. Epstein replies, BP, please. Epstein then adds, I want private time with you. However, I am here with redacted and redacted. Should I bring them all so as to add some life? The Duke responds, yes, plenty of space here for chat. Bring them. December 2010, there's another message from the Duke to Epstein framed as a holiday note with an attachment. And the text includes, it was great to spend time with my U.S. family. Looking forward to joining you all again soon. I'll call you tomorrow as I am moving the family up to Sandringham during the day. Now, around the same time period, there was another email from the Duke to Epstein that includes this line.
Operating under shell ownership. You don't stumble onto an archive like that by accident. You inherit it. You buy it. Or you seize it when someone powerful falls. That's the part the public rarely understands. When elite figures collapse, financially, legally, reputationally, their archives don't disappear. They're absorbed. Collected by investigators, private collectors, rival networks, or institutions claiming jurisdiction. Power never wastes leverage. It redistributes it. So the archive grows. Year after year. Decade after decade. Footage stacking on footage, documents cross-referenced with travel logs, surveillance synced with financial records, a map of influence built not from headlines but from private behavior. And the longer it stays sealed, the more dangerous it becomes. Because time amplifies impact. A recording from last week is gossip. A recording from 20 years ago is historical contamination. It reframes entire legacies. Destroys carefully manufactured.
And he's really quite blunt. This is Saturday, August 15th, 2015, 11:05 p.m. Take a selfie of your bleep, and send. I think you know what he's referring to, a private area of a woman. The response back, writing to Jeffrey Epstein, "I'm sorry, I was a little bit lost when you asked me about sex and what I want to try with you. As you know, I am a virgin, so I know nothing about sexual life and cannot answer you. What I know, I want to try sex because I maybe will feel more confidence. Sometimes I think I am too shy for modeling. You are attractive for me, and that's why I told you why not." I think an argument could be made, maybe this is somebody who is not from the United States, kind of like broken English. There's this one from Jeffrey Epstein to somebody, redacted, April 22nd, 2012. "Make sure you take some form of antibiotic for the bleep, Cleocin or some such. You've had many bleeps in just a few weeks." He's referring to male genitalia, that she's been having a lot of sex. So the response back is, "Jeffrey, I am a clean freak. I contact my doctors for every little thing, not so many, always the same, and always with condom. We'll take a test. That's always useful. I'm a bit surprised to see these messages." He responds back, "I only want good for you." Now you could see prosecutors maybe saying that this person was used by Jeffrey Epstein, right? Outsourcing her to different men, right? How would he know that she was with so many men, allegedly? It's vile. It arguably goes to maybe even like a grooming kind of thing too. You know, I'm only looking out for you. But how about this one? A riddle that honestly you're not going to soon forget. So it's written to Jeffrey Epstein, April 29th, 2013. "What is greater than God, more evil than devil? Reach, need it, poor have it, and if you eat it, you will die. What is it?" And the email in this conversation at one point back is, "Or your bleep," meaning female genitalia, "either works." And this person writes back, "Ha ha ha, great answer, I like it, but poor don't have my bleep." How about this one? Actually, I think this one is important in a sex trafficking context, okay? So this is from Jeffrey Epstein to, again, an unidentified individual. "Okay, now it's time to send me great sexy photos, no excuses." Person writes back, "You will be receiving at least one sexy photo every single day until the day I see you in New York in the end of October. First one soon to come," with a wink face. And this is important. Epstein writes back, "Your trip will depend on how sexy they are." Okay. So in a sex trafficking case, the prosecution would need to prove that the defendant enticed or recruited a victim to engage in sex acts. It's kind of commercial sex, right? So if you reward somebody or you promise something of value to get sex, those are key elements, key evidence in this kind of criminal case. So sexy photos in exchange for a trip, maybe the argument could be, hey, it was just tongue in cheek, maybe he was joking, but you could see how prosecutors could say that is evidence of sex trafficking, or maybe just something to think about. By the way, just talking gross for a second, I got to mention Peter Attia. This is the anti-aging influencer. You've probably seen him on social media, recently appointed contributor at CBS News, although it does become a question about his role at that company moving forward. He was mentioned almost 2,000 times in the Epstein files, the newly released Epstein files, specifically emails between him and Epstein from 2015 to 2018. And I'm not going to lie, they're really, really disgusting. Attia wrote in one email to Epstein in February of 2016 that a woman's private part is, quote, low carb. Added, still awaiting results on gluten content though. How about this email dated June 24th, 2015 with the subject line, got a fresh shipment, where Attia seemingly writes, the biggest problem with becoming friends with you, the life you lead is so outrageous, and yet I can't tell a soul. Kind of chilling when you think about Epstein and the fact that he was, again, brought up on federal sex trafficking charges of minors, accused of abusing minors for years. But
Manufactured images. Rewrites public memory. That's why archive containment is treated like national security inside elite circles. Legal teams don't just fight lawsuits, they fight discovery access. PR firms don't just manage scandals, they manage archive anticipation. Crisis managers run simulations based on hypothetical leaks that haven't even happened. Because they know the truth. If one vault opens, others might follow. Archives create chain reactions. One file validates another. One witness emboldens 10 more. One leak turns sealed rumors into prosecutable timelines. And the internet accelerates everything. There was a time when damaging footage could be suppressed through media gatekeeping. Not anymore. Now files travel through anonymous drop servers, encrypted forums, decentralized storage nodes, private collector trades.
Attia went on the defensive. He wrote a long response on X, reads in part, reading that exchange now is very embarrassing and I will not defend it. I'm ashamed of myself for everything about this. At the time, I understood this exchange as juvenile, not a reference to anything dark or harmful. He added that he did not participate in any criminal activity. He also added that he was, quote, never on his plane, never on his island, and never present at any sex parties. I will say Atiyeh stepped down from his role as chief science officer at the snack bar company David Protein. It was also reported that a 60 Minutes segment that he was featured on has been pulled. And again, no word at the time of this recording on the future of his association with CBS, but we'll see. Oh, this one was a surprising one. Didn't expect this. In the Epstein files, there was a reference to Diddy. Yeah, a connection to another major federal sex crimes defendant in recent history, P. Diddy. So this was from somebody, unidentified, to Jeffrey Epstein, January 1st, 2013. How are you feeling? We were invited to Ike Batista boat on the 2nd, went to P. Daddy party, met some interesting PPL people. Didn't see Elon though. Miss you, kiss. 2013? Lot to break down here. To be clear, going to a Diddy party doesn't mean you were part of criminal activity or knew about it, but those parties came under a lot of scrutiny after Diddy was hit with over 50 lawsuits claiming sexual abuse and then charged with federal sex trafficking, racketeering, and prostitution counts. He was ultimately acquitted of the most serious charges at his very publicized trial, but he was convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution. He's currently in prison. But the Elon thing is interesting too, though, okay? Because assuming we're talking Elon Musk, I mean, I don't know another Elon that would come into play here. But Elon Musk emails 2012, 2013, there were emails where it seemed to suggest the two were trying to meet up, him and Epstein. For example, December 2013, we'll be in the BVI St. Bart's area over the holidays. Is there a good time to visit? And then there was a response from JEE Vacation. I will send heli for you, seemingly a helicopter. Actually, I could fly back early on the 3rd. We will be in St. Bart's. When should we head to your island? On the 2nd? Did we need to organize Elon to your island on January 2nd? And Musk appeared to ask Epstein in one email, what day or night will be the wildest party on your island? Now, it doesn't appear that ever happened, that he visited. In fact, Musk had previously tweeted that Epstein was a creep, that he tried repeatedly to get him to visit the island. He always declined. And Musk also responded more recently on X that no one pushed harder than me to have the Epstein files released. And I'm glad that has finally happened. I had very little correspondence with Epstein and declined repeated invitations to go to his island or fly on his Lolita Express. He was well aware that some email correspondence with him could be misinterpreted and used by detractors to smear my name. Okay, the next one I want to get into is something that's tied to a recent episode of Sidebar we did. There is a message from Corinna to Epstein, okay? And there are links in this email to very graphic pornography sites. Now, why is this important? It's from September 2012. Why is this important? As we reported, Corinna Shuliak, if this is really her, if she's really sending this email, Corinna Shuliak appears to be Epstein's secret girlfriend. The person that he planned to leave the bulk of his fortune, $100 million, and properties to when he died. She apparently spoke to him 20 minutes the night before he died. There was even evidence that he was contemplating marrying her. Now, on one hand, couples sharing porn or engaging in private sexual conduct or behavior, whatever, each their own. But on the other hand, you can see why this looks weird, right? Considering who Epstein was. Now, she has never been formally accused of wrongdoing or charged with a crime, but
a video can be copied a million times before lawyers even draft an injunction. Deletion became symbolic. Containment became impossible. So the strategy evolved. If you can't stop the leak, discredit the archive. Call it fabricated. Call it manipulated. Call it politically motivated. Flood the space with counter leaks, edited clips, misdated footage, false documents designed to muddy verification pipelines. Truth gets buried under volume. And the public stops knowing what's real. That confusion protects power better than silence ever did. Because uncertainty paralyzes outrage. People argue about authenticity instead of accountability. Meanwhile, the archive remains mostly sealed. Only fragments escape. Never the full collection. Never the complete timeline. Just enough to spark fear. Not enough to collapse the structure. That selective exposure isn't random. It's strategic. Sometimes leaks are warnings. Signals.
Just something I have to mention here with this email. By the way, big thing in the Epstein files release was his connection to the rich, the powerful, the notorious. And a name that constantly pops up, and an email that's very disturbing regarding him, is Woody Allen. Former neighbor. Just got to call out this email. So creepy. So Epstein seems to joke about being accused of going to a pedophile convention when he was going to visit Paris with director Woody Allen, writing this in 2012. So this was an email back to someone who said to Epstein, like asking, I guess as a joke, "Les pedophile convention?" And Epstein writes back, "I think pedophile is the plural." It's weird. It's not even like he's denying it. It's just strange. Now I gotta go to this. This has been making a ton of news. So another disturbing email in this list is a reported exchange between Epstein and Peter Mandelson. This is a prominent British politician, former diplomat, UK ambassador to Washington at one point, causing a lot of uproar. So this exchange from 2009 allegedly surrounds Epstein's release from prison after serving 13 of his 18-month sentence, again, on those charges of solicitation of prostitution and of solicitation of prostitution of a minor. And here's how that went. So this is from Jeffrey Epstein, July 22nd, 2009. He writes him, or allegedly writes Mandelson, "Free and home." Mandelson seemingly writes back, "How shall we celebrate?" Epstein responds, "With grace and modesty. Those are the names of two strippers." Okay. Then Mandelson writes at another point, "How is freedom feeling?" And Epstein writes back, "She feels fresh, firm, and creamy." And then this is the big one. This is allegedly from Mandelson to Epstein. In response, he writes back, "Naughty boy." By the way, just 2 days ago, London officials announced that they are launching a criminal investigation against Mandelson on the same day that he resigned from his seat in Britain's parliament. And while the announcement didn't name him specifically, it did reference a 72-year-old man, a former government minister, for misconduct in public office offenses. So we'll see where that goes. By the way, back in September, Mandelson was fired from his job as the UK ambassador to the United States after there was more context put to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And I will tell you, this email sure doesn't help. I also want to talk about another big figure, Peggy Siegel, big publicist, okay? She was a known Epstein associate. So in one sense, it wasn't new. Her name was coming up in the Epstein files. And I will tell you, something happened, though. An email came out I got to mention. To give you a little context about who she is, though, Tina Brown from the Daily Beast penned an opinion piece the other day. It was titled, "How the Epstein Files Exposed His Fixer's Plot to Neutralize Me," referring to Siegel. And it was about how Siegel had seemingly tried to do damage control for Jeffrey Epstein when all these allegations were coming out. For instance, Brown says that back in 2010, when she was editor of the Daily Beast, Siegel had asked her to a then Prince Andrew dinner that was hosted by Jeffrey Epstein, and apparently Charlie Rose was there and Woody Allen was there. And Brown allegedly says to Siegel, quote, "What the is this, Peggy? The pedophile's ball?" And Siegel allegedly responded, "All that Epstein stuff being so overblown." Now she goes on to describe how the Epstein files released this week shows how much of a PR panic Epstein and Siegel were in. I say all that to give you background to point out this email, okay? Really something else. Okay, so this is from apparently Peggy Siegel to jeevacation@gmail.com, so I assume Jeffrey Epstein. This is dated December 8th.
Sent internally rather than publicly. Reminders that the vault exists, and that access isn't controlled by those being archived. You'll notice how reactions shift when those signals appear. Sudden compliance. Public apologies without clear accusations. Executives stepping down for personal reasons. Organizations restructuring overnight. None of that happens from rumors alone. It happens when people know something is documented. Because documentation is power in its purest form. Not opinion. Not accusation. Record. Timestamped. Stored. Duplicated. Waiting. And archives don't just contain wrongdoing. They contain relationships. Networks mapped through proximity. Who attended what? Who traveled where? Who stayed how long? Patterns invisible to the public but obvious inside data clusters. That's why archive exposure terrifies entire industries, not just individuals. Because one revealed connection leads to another, and another, until the illusion of separation collapses. Suddenly competitors look like collaborators. Rivals look like partners. Public enemies look like private allies. The archive doesn't just expose behavior. It exposes structure. And once the public sees structure, trust implodes. Fans question loyalty. Consumers question branding. Investors question stability. Because image is currency, and archives devalue it instantly. And spectacle usually wins. But archives are patient. They don't need constant visibility. They expose systems. Systems built on privacy that was never truly private. Power that depended on secrecy that was never truly secure. And legacies that were never meant to survive daylight.